The headlines this morning: schools in England will continue to get one-word inspection judgments. Ministers say the system has significant benefits despite criticism after the suicide of a head teacher.
The government has rejected calls to scrap one-word inspection judgments for schools in England, insisting they provide a succinct summary for parents. Teachers' leaders and some MPs had demanded a change after the death of the head teacher Ruth Perry. She took her own life while awaiting the outcome of an Ofsted inspection which downgraded her school. Here's our education editor, Branwen Jeffries.
The government's insisted that the single overall Ofsted grade has significant benefits. In its written response to an inquiry by MPs that called for them to be dropped, it argues that the priority is to look at ways of improving the system. An Ofsted inspection was ruled to have contributed to Ruth Perry's suicide. The investigating coroner warned that the simplicity of the overall grade for parents wasn't being weighed against teacher welfare. Mrs Perry's sister told the BBC she was angry and disappointed by the government's decision.
22 minutes to 7. Outstanding to inadequate. These one-word overall conclusions on schools in England will stay, the Department of Education has said, despite how they have been linked to the suicide of head teacher Ruth Perry. Branwen Jeffries, our education editor, joins us. Why are ministers saying they are committed to this system, Branwen?
They are responding, Michelle, to an all-party committee of MPs who heard an inquiry last year and published their report, including a call for these one-word judgments to go in January. And MPs were clear that this was the area on which they had received the most critical feedback around Ofsted's work with schools. But responding to that, the government has said that it still believes there's significant benefits to the simplicity of these judgments, that they link in many ways not just to giving parents a clear way of making a decision, but also to the government's own processes for intervening when a school does need extra help and for deciding which schools need to be fully re-inspected more swiftly than others.
But will it remain the case that a word like inadequate could refer to a school which is failing on multiple fronts and where you really wouldn't want your children to go, and one where there could be something that's relatively technical and that could be quickly fixed?
For the moment, that does remain the case, and that was a key concern raised by the coroner, not just at the end of the inquest into the suicide of Ruth Perry, but she issued what's called a Prevent Future Deaths report, setting out her belief that there were potential risks in the system, including the risk of another similar tragedy, and top of that list was the concern that the ease of communication, the simplicity of communication for parents was not being weighed sufficiently against the risk of the welfare to teachers. And that's what head teachers' unions this morning have honed in on, describing this as deeply disappointing, saying it's a damaging system and it's inhumane. But the government is sticking with its approach, which it has been its consistent view throughout this debate, that this is simple. It's worth saying, however, that the Labour Party has said it would replace the single word overall judgment with something that more resembles a report card.
Thank you very much, Branwen, and we'll get the view of Sir Michael Wilshaw, former head of Ofsted, at 7:30. The time is 25 to 8. One-word overall judgments on schools are to stay. Ministers have decided on the Ofsted inspection system in England. That is despite a coroner ruling last year that head teacher Ruth Perry's suicide was contributed to by an Ofsted inspection of the school she led. The coroner noted that the one-word system meant a judgment of inadequate, which Mrs Perry's school got in 2022, could be given to one which is dreadful in all respects and another which is good, but with issues which could be remedied by the time the report was published. Sir Michael Wilshaw joins us. He was head of Ofsted between 2012 and 2016. Morning, Sir Michael.
Good morning.
Do you think ministers have made the right decision?
No. I think they've made the wrong decision. I think they've not listened carefully enough to what the coroner has had to say. They haven't listened to the head teacher associations, two-thirds of head teachers have said over the last year that they've lost confidence in Ofsted and the single word judgment. So they haven't made the right decision. I mean, Ofsted over the last 30 years since its foundation has changed and adapted over that time. and it has remained a force for good. It needs to change and adapt now.
But you presided over the one-word system, didn't you, in your time? Did you believe in it strongly then?
I struggle with it, to be honest with you, because it led to inconsistency of judgment. I was forced to remove inspection from the outsourced providers that we had at that time, private providers who were responsible for monitoring inspection. I had to withdraw that and bring all inspection in-house. And I decided that we would have to work towards a different system. By the time I consulted with the Department of Education on that, my term of office had come to an end.
Before we talk about what kind of different system you'd like, let's just have a listen to Amanda Spielman, who was head of Ofsted until the end of last year. And when we spoke to her on this programme last summer, this is what she said, defending the one-word assessments.
We could write a sentence that captured all the things that typically are reflected in an inadequate judgment and use that. But the feedback when we talk to people is they know if the consequences are the same, if the significance of it is the same, it would come to mean exactly the same very quickly. So it wouldn't really solve the underlying discomfort.
So what conclusion have you come to, Sir Michael, about what you could have instead of one word?
Yeah, I mean, we should only keep that one-word judgment if we're absolutely sure that they reflect what's happening in the school accurately, that the judgments are secure, that they're consistent and made by people who know what they're doing and have the respect of those that they are inspecting and have sufficient time to inspect and gather the necessary
Shouldn't that always
evidence.
be the case?
So we haven't got that. Inspection takes place over a 1.5 day period, and we haven't got inspectors with sufficient experience of the sectors that they're inspecting. Some of them, 40%, I believe, have never been a head teacher. So we haven't got that. And the government needs to listen to what head teachers are saying. I mean, inspection can only take place with the consent of those that we inspect, a bit like the police force. The service with the consent of the public. It's the same with inspection. So it's really important that the government listens. And if the overall judgment is not secure, then we need to change it. And if you look at inspection reports, as I've done in a number of schools over the last few years, you've got a situation where the curriculum might be fine, might be good, might be outstanding, but the outcomes are extremely poor, the progress levels poor. Leadership might be judged good, but governance might be weak. Attainment might be good, but not for significant groups, special needs children or the most able. The behaviour might be good, but the teaching poor and vice versa. So it's really difficult, I think, for inspectors, particularly inexperienced ones. And HMI now spend just over 3 years at Ofsted. It's not seen anymore as a long-term option for many people. That it's really important that inspectors are able to come to the right decision. And they find that very, very difficult and cram all these conflicting judgments into that final one word, and it often is the wrong judgment.
OK, but the Department for Education is saying that using grades such as outstanding or inadequate give parents an important summary of local schools. I appreciate what you're saying about it's a complex thing. You need the right people who can make good decisions looking at the school as a whole. But you need a headline, don't you, in the end? You need something at the end to summarise what you found. Now, if that's not one word, is it a percentage grade? Is it some other kind of numerical system? What is the headline in the system you'd like to see?
Well, it doesn't have to be a headline. We shouldn't patronise parents by saying, look, we've got to have something which is very simple for them. They want to see something which really, really goes into the detail of the performance of a school, its strengths and weaknesses. And therefore, I'm now very much in favour of a report card, which is what the opposition is saying that they will bring in with those strengths and weaknesses. And then inspectors report back to this senior management of the school and the head teacher and the governors, but they don't report to the parents. I think there should be a mandatory parents meeting at the end of an inspection when the judgments are made clear to the parents and explained to the parents. That doesn't happen at the moment. Parents are left out of the equation. And I think it's too easy to say parents want a simple judgment. Well, that's not the issue. The judgment has to be the right judgment. And we need to be honest with parents, not just say we're going to provide you with a simple conclusion. That's not what parents want. And in a recent survey, increasing numbers of parents, do not trust the judgment of Ofsted. And that's another worry.
OK, so Michael Wilshaw, thank you very much, former head of Ofsted.